All right, so we're having our bathroom remodel done, and we have some new tile being put in. Not very happy with the way this is turning out. Lots of problems. So where to start? Let's see. Well, for one, when they applied the red guard, it doesn't look like they didn't really create a seal here, like where the seam is. This is supposed to be sealed. And so I'm not sure what it looks like all the way behind here. I have some pictures earlier where it doesn't look very good either. And I read about it, and now I'm finding out that, yeah, we're supposed to have all these things sealed off. This needs to be waterproofed. And, you know, they have some on the tape here, but then they just leave it off, and there's big gaps up there. The tiles themselves are not lining up very well. We got, these two are off by, I don't know, maybe not too much, but they're not quite lined up. This line should be like right here, but where it becomes more noticeable is when you come over to here. We have this sliver tile right here, and it's bad enough to have a sliver tile, but not only is this one crooked, it's smaller at the bottom than the top, but it doesn't line up with this sliver tile right here. So this should be the same size as this one, and they should at least, even if the wall is crooked, the lines should at least line up. So that's not right. And then we come down here, and I got this little level so I can actually show you the pieces individually, but all of these, you got to get the video that's level right here and show the bubbles off on this top one. All of these they're not straight. They're so far off. It is not even close to being level. And that's on like all of these tiles. They're like that all the way around. Thing for these top ones, they are also all really far off level. They're sticking out towards, they're sticking out this way, and you can see the top tile isn't square either. That's this side pushes this way, and this top side pushes this way. So, and it's the same thing on this wall. So both corners are messed up equally. So at least they're consistently inconsistent with the rest of the wall. The rest of the wall is level. So we can see here, these tiles are level. These ones are clearly not. And if you put a bigger level, you'll see a big gap. We've done that in a previous photo. And then we have these schluters were cut, and they're not lining up. They're like completely mismatched, and the gap is inconsistent across the schluter, and then it comes into this other cut right here, and there's a big burr. There's a burr on this corner, and there's a burr on this corner. This one's okay. It's not the best. There's a little bit of a burr, but it's not terrible. This one's bad. This one's bad. And I think this one's bad here too. It's got like a bump on it. And then they broke and cracked all of these when they put them in. These are all cracks. There's a crack here. It's a little harder to see. It's a lighter color. But yeah, they broke a bunch of tiles here, and the edge work isn't great. There's big chips in the tiles here too. And on this side, same thing. This is the other side of the niche, and all these tiles are kind of messed up on the edges, but some big chips on these two. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up. There we go. And then a bunch more cracks. All these little arrows are cracks. This is cracked. This one's cracked. 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 And cracked. And there's probably some more if I didn't point them out. They're chipped or cracked as well. So we put blue tape on all those problems. And then there's like the edges over here. They are not cut very clean. These cuts are pretty poor. It's inconsistent too. It gets bigger. And we got a big gap right here that's not consistent with anything. As you can see, the tile down here is a much smaller gap. And then I'm a little then there's all these chips along the edges. These aren't good clean cuts. These are going to show when they put grout. And there's not enough gap to really even get grout in here. I don't know what their plan is for that. And so these are all problems. This one has some chips on it too right here. And down here as well. These are all jagged cuts. And then the tiles are butted against each other, so I'm hoping, I don't know if this is going to cause problems in the future with expansion and contraction during the different seasons and temperatures. But those are all really, really close. And I don't know what their plan is. And then all of these guys on the edge, they stick out. So here's the square. They're pretty far off. I mean, that's not even close. You can see there's a big gap there. And this is a very small square. This is 8 inches right there. So they're pretty far off, seeing it off of 8 inches. Or if you put it this way, you can see that there's a gap on this side. So I don't know, maybe the tiler didn't have a square. And then they're all like that on this side as well, on the opposite side of the shower, big gaps. You can see that's not square at all. This is something, I'm pressing this against the wall as best I can. The tiles aren't completely flat, so there's some play, but you know, from here, somewhere between here and here is where the square is, and it's way off. And all of these tiles like that are off. Down here we have the drain. It looks pretty bad in my opinion. You know, these gaps are just like all over the place, and there's a chip in this tile, and this one wasn't cut all the way. So I don't know, maybe this will look better. I doubt it, but maybe it'll look better when they put grout. And you know, there's some pretty big inconsistencies. I know the floor is sloped, but man, some of these gaps are just, it seems like they could have done something to like be a little more consistent with these gaps on the floor. And like that one back there is pretty small too. And then let's see, we got the other floor they did. There's a chip in this tile. I don't know if this was just something the guy didn't notice when he put it in or something that's happened. We had some other work done in between the tiling, and it looks like someone dropped, I don't know, a hammer or something over here, because this looks crushed. It doesn't look like he put that in that way. Let's see. Oh, so that's it for the tile. And then now we got other stuff. I'm not sure what's going on in this corner. It looks like they were trying to mud over some broken drywall, because this screw here isn't holding anything, and this is all hollow. I don't know what this is. This is like, you can, you know, it's not gonna, this isn't gonna hold up, and it's peeled away from the wall. You know, it's not square. So I don't know what they're doing here, or what their plan is to fix this, because we need to attach the baseboard into there. And then this whole wall is, you know, they didn't put the screws in right. And the contractor asked the guys that came out to put extra screws in to this drywall is all cracked too. But he asked them to put extra screws in to hold it to the wall, but they didn't. So what they did is they just went over the screws, so you can't tell that they were driven in too far into the paper. They broke the paper on the drywall basically. And so nothing's actually holding much of this wall. It wiggles a bit. If you push on it, the screws like move. I don't know what's going on here. There's a huge waviness in the drywall. The drywall here is much thinner than the plaster. The plaster wall kind of looks like this everywhere, and this door frame is pretty thick. It's like having two pieces of drywall. So what the guy did was he left a gap back here and pushed this frame for our medicine cabinet this way, so that when you did the drywall, it would line up with the old wall. And that did line up surprisingly, but for some reason, I don't know what trick he'd used back here, because I didn't get to see what's behind here, but the drywall back here is sticking out farther than the plaster. So this is a huge mismatch, because the drywall is pretty thin, plaster's super thick. This should have been level when they started. I shouldn't have this big glob, and I don't know what their plan is. It's about a 1/4 inch off. So they're gonna have to, like, I don't know if they're gonna try to build out the whole entire left side of this wall with drywall mud, like a 1/4 inch of drywall mud. I don't know what they're gonna do to fix that. I would think they would just start this piece over, because it's so messed up and there's so many problems with it that I think they should redo it. But they will not, of course, probably listen to what I recommend. And let's see, we had some doors hung, and in our house we have some extra wide door frames. Here's one that hasn't been touched, and so there's, you know, the door frame here is short, and then this is the long side, and the side with the door on it, the door swings this way, and it's the same thing. So the short side is the side where the door swings, so that it can clear all the trim and all that kind of stuff that you put on afterward, and then you have the wide side. Now they did opposite when they put these in. They have the door does swing towards the short side still, because this is a pre-hung door, but they they have the door frame centered in the middle, and this is going to be a problem because we now need to get jamb extensions, and the way they installed it, you'd have to put one on each side, but this side is going to be extended, so this whole thing needs to be slid over here so that when they put the jamb extension and the framing around the door, that this, you know, is going to have enough room in here, because it's going to stick out more and the door's not going to work properly, or there's potential for that anyways. Shimmed this piece of drywall with a door shim up here to make it flat with the rest of the wall, but they didn't shim the bottom of the door. So this is the old wood for the plaster. It used to sit on this. This drywall is out that much. It's sticking out quite far. It's like it needs a whole nother piece of drywall. It is so far off because they didn't put the shim in. They didn't shim, they shimmed the top and they didn't shim the bottom. So the whole wall is off. You can clearly see it in the video. I mean, it bows way in at the bottom here. It's completely bowed in. The old wall over here is straight, and then it comes in. And also on this side of the door, which again, the door needs to go all the way to this side to avoid issues with closing it, but they put it instead all the way this side. So this side's almost flush down here. But as you get to the top, there's a big gap, and it doesn't close at all on this door. And it's the same issue. They have the long side flush kind of at the bottom down here. This is pretty flush right here. And as you go up, you know, it's not as off as the other one at all. But the problem is that the short side over here needs to go this way. So this whole door needs to move about ½ inch over. This whole door frame needs to go that way, but it's flush on this side. But as you move up the door, it is now not flush on this side, and the door doesn't actually close right. It's so far off. We got problems. The door doesn't close, and as you can see, because it's crooked at the bottom, there's a gap at the bottom, right there. And as you go up, it's hitting in this corner. And the gap just gets wider as you go down. So then the same thing here, they like a bunch of these screws go past the paper, and the guy told them to like add more screws wherever some of them are pretty bad. They go off paper, and instead they just fill them all in right here and right here. So I don't even know which screws are now past the paper. I can't tell. Some of them you can tell they're okay. But so now I don't know what to do to fix this because I don't know which screws, where we need extra screws, other than the obvious locations. Like up here, it's past paper, sticking out. There's something going on here because their patch cracked, and it bows out here too. It's not straight, but it's not as off as everywhere else, but it's still cracked. And then, you know, they when they took the doors off, the old doors, they cracked the plaster, and instead of taping it or doing anything to fix this crack, I don't know what all the things you do. Usually, I thought you just tape it normally, but they just plastered over it, and that's never gonna look right. I mean, they can put mud, but it's just gonna crack again. And they did actually the same thing. It looks like on this side, it looks like there's a crack here, and you know, I can't see because of all the mud, but you kind of see it's cracked. Same thing. And of course, like here's the worst, where it bubbles out of the wall 1/8 of an inch, and this whole thing just cracked when it hasn't dried. I don't know if it's because they put too much or what their plan is to make this wall flat. But I don't want a wall that is flat and then bubbles out and then goes back in, and then it's just crazy. For some reason, they didn't want to replace this old piece of plaster on this side. They didn't want to replace this. So when the guy came in here and he was removing this plaster, he didn't use one of those cutting tools. He didn't cut it with a knife. He didn't cut it with the vibratory tool for cutting drywall. He just came in here and, you know, busted all this out with a hammer. And, you know, if you're demoing the wall, whatever. But the problem is they were keeping this piece, and I didn't know that when they were doing that. I would have asked them, what are you doing? But this is all cracked. There's a fine crack. It's not as obvious as some of the other ones, but you can definitely, I don't know, maybe you can see it on the camera. There's a fine, so it cracked to here, and I had marked it so they could tape it, and they didn't put any tape. They just went over it. And there's another one here And I have photos of my marks somewhere. I took a photo. There's another crack here. And instead of properly fixing these, they just mudded over them. So those will all be cracked in within the next year probably, or next time they drop a bomb over at the military base and the house shakes or we have an earthquake. And this here is a crack extending from this one. So it's already cracked out to here since I circled it a week ago. That's about it, I guess, for now, until I find something else so they do some more work. All right, well, that's it. You're getting right here, right?